her daughter, because that's the big reveal in this movie. This is the whole,
technically
it's her daughter
both.
and her sister.
Yeah.
Which yeah, we'll get to that. But
Roll Tide. Welcome back to the Great American Movie Review, where we review great American movies.
My name is Mikiah.
And I am Kyle. This is a Movie of the Week style podcast where we take turns picking films and we have a casual discussion about their context and quality. This week I have chosen the 1974, I guess, consensus one of the best written films ever, Chinatown.
It's definitely a classic.
Yeah, it's definitely a classic.
Yeah. And also, if you prefer us in plugging our audio, so if you prefer us on audio formats, you can find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We're also out there, just letting you know.
So Chinatown is about Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Gittes, who is a private private eye, basically. And he's hired first by what he believes to be Evelyn Mulwray to investigate her husband, and then it turns out to be actually not Evelyn Mulwray, and then so he gets hired by actual Evelyn Mulwray to investigate the murder of her husband, and then shenanigans ensue.
Yes, it's a film noir, so the plot is dense and it's a tangled, knotted mess until it gets sorted out and they find out what's really going on. It's a classic like film noir kind of that investigative private eye style movie.
So for context, I had never seen this movie, but I always knew that it was a classic.
Yes.
And I wanted to pick it specifically because I knew that I would probably think it would be a classic. And it's been a while since we've picked a movie that is this kind of movie. Well, we've never picked a movie like this, but it's been a while since we've had a writing-focused movie. Something that you can watch 100 times and still find something else with the plot or with the characters that is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. We haven't had as much of like what you would call writing-heavy films lately.
I would point to In Bruges and
Network
as our only two. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
Oh, When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, When Harry Met Sally as well.
Different genre, but that kind of that dialogue, character, and plot heavy film.
Right. No,
so
I agree with that.
I understand that you've seen this movie.
Yes.
And I do not know what you think about it. So I'm going to let you go first since you've technically seen it first.
I mean, okay, well, just some general facts about the film. It's directed by Roman Polanski. It received massive acclaim, garnering 11 Academy Award nominations, winning for original screenplay. It was also a commercial hit, making over $29 million on a $6 million budget in 1974. So in today's terms, that's it would be around $180 million on a $37 million budget, which is insane for like
that's a good
noir style crime movie, you know?
Yeah,
like
especially for the genre.
Yeah, that's a decent hit, especially for the time when it came out. So absolutely. Yeah, this film is iconic and it had a very big impact in the year it came out. I think the only reason that it didn't take away, I probably would have won Best Picture and several other Oscars if the Godfather Part 2
of Godfather Part 2
hadn't come out the same year.
Yeah.
So this would probably be a Best Picture winner if not for that, honestly. That's just kind of how it is.
In my eyes, it is a Best Picture winner in 2005 because Crash is definitely not that.
We'll just replace it. Yeah. But yeah, general thoughts. I mean, this is a classic. This is a classic for a reason. It really does a great job, I think, within the landscape of film, representing both the old and the new for the time, where they took one of the most classic film genres with this film noir and taking it into the 70s. We've talked a lot about the Hays Codes in previous videos, but this is obviously post Hays Code, and 70s is known for a lot of it has a little bit more sleaze and scuzz and grime on it.
Yeah,
you know?
Good, because that's what was happening in the 30s.
Right. And and noir is known for that moral gray area and kind of just having darker content like that. And so having that presentation, and for the most part, this movie plays it straight in a way that's not too far off from what you would get back then, but you do get these later reveals that just kind of bring it to that 70s grime, low dirt, just kind of place that's just kind of skeezy. And yeah, I love the way that it kind of blends the old school with what it was at the time now, like the modern sensibilities of 70s film. And it's so good. Jack Nicholson is so good. Faye Dunaway's great.
I'll agree with
I
that.
do. Yeah.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is it captures LA in a way that I don't think any other movie can or has done.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Yeah.
Because LA at the time, especially at that time and the years beforehand, was the Wild West when it came to private detective and also screen actors. So seeing a take on that, it doesn't seem like it, but it's definitely a love letter to Hollywood from the 1930s.
Yeah, because it's set in the 30s and everything. So yeah, it's definitely steeped in all of that.
But I also love that it takes a story of, I believe it was the St. Francis Dam collapsing in the late 20s, and turns that into the plot of a murder whodunit.
Right.
And it also it just the way it uses its characters. I love the fact that we see race relations done better in this movie than Crash, for example. But
well, everything's better than Crash.
Everything's better than Crash. But I mean, if you think about the time period of the 30s, especially because California itself had only been Americanized over the past less than 100 years. But we also have to remember it was a Spanish colony until Mexico gained independence. Then it was a Mexican territory, and then it became American. And also there was an explosion of Asian immigration as well. So you have the Mexican Americans, you have the European Americans coming in, especially in the 40s, 1840s rather, and afterwards. So you have those mixing with the Asian immigrants coming in. And it's so interesting to take a look at those kind of relations at the time that I really just enjoy seeing a movie. It's getting dirty, of course, but I appreciate that it's recognizing that in a way that I don't think Hollywood wants to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the 70s is full of that kind of stuff. Honestly, in a way, it's kind of refreshing that this is more of a true noir, because the 70s does feature what I would call the emergence of like the neo-noir genre with stuff like Taxi Driver, where they're taking those ideas, but then it's really modern, like for the time, and kind of how that would evolve to that. Whereas this, in the way it goes back to the 1930s, obviously in just its setting alone, but then also stylistically is truly in that classic noir feeling, but then bringing in that lens of time and perspective.
Yeah, I didn't realize at the time, but you know the video game LA Noir?
Yeah.
By Rockstar, the people who do GTA.
I've not played it, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, this I didn't realize how much influence this movie and also just 1930s LA at the time, even though it was set in like the 40s and 50s, but 1930s at the time, and really just murder mystery had on Hollywood and LA in such a way that it makes ripples everywhere. But I love seeing it in this movie. And also LA Noir is a fantastic game for anybody who also likes that kind of gritty 1930s Wild West when it comes to police force and especially detective work.
Right, for sure.
I just like the environment of this so much.
Yeah, and this is like Jack Nicholson too, like in his prime.
Not only that, this might be my favorite. Yeah, I'd say this is my favorite role he's ever done.
Oh, really?
Because of how stoic he is and confident still, and because of how ignorant he also is. The character of Jake Gittes is an amazing character. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously was written for Jack Nicholson, but man, does he embody it
Yeah. Not really
to
a
a
good
T.
guy either. Like
No, no, no.
he embodies some of like a lot of the tendencies of the time that it's portraying.
Yeah.
He repeats this really horrible joke, which is meant to be like just he leads off on a bad foot in this relationship with the Faye Dunaway character, who is yeah.
But the fact that he's able to not only rebuild that relationship from the ground
Right.
up, essentially from starting on the back foot, but
Right.
also he's just an interesting character. His dynamic with Faye Dunaway's character Evelyn Mulray is insanely good.
Yeah.
It is some of the best character work I've seen.
Yeah. And Faye Dunaway is also terrific in this. As just this person, she is in all effects the what's the word? The femme fatale of the film. This mysterious woman who you don't quite know her motivation. She's sitting on some secret. She's
Yeah.
filling that role. But the secret here and the way that she plays it is so complex, and like there's so many dynamics within the relationships of that character that she plays it so well, to try to like get him to help her, but also she is manipulating him to some extent because she's not giving him all the information, even though he's investigating stuff for her.
But the character work for that is done so well.
Yeah.
And given Faye Dunaway's acting chops, she absolutely embodies that. She knows what's going on. She knows the ins and outs of everything. She doesn't want you to know. She's never going to tell you, but she's kind of hinting towards certain things every now and then. She's giving you breadcrumbs just so that you'll be seduced by the story.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
It's done so well.
Yeah. Speaking of just like the film making in general, there is a big, I think, elephant in the room when it comes to talking about any Polanski film. Roman Polanski is a very complex individual in the history of Hollywood. You want to look into his life, you can. We're not going to go into it too much here, I don't think, unless we do. Who's to say? But basically, to get it out of the way, the man's a scumbag. The man is a convicted person who's been on the run from authorities. He fled the country in 1978 because
he actually fled the country because the system wasn't going his way exactly.
Right. Because he was okay. So for just basic context, he was charged with rape,
with drugging and sexually assaulting a 13-year-old. Yes,
he didn't get convicted of that, but he got convicted of
he pled guilty. He pled guilty and was going to serve a probation period because that's what the confession that he gave, and he pled guilty. But the guilty plea deal was that he would get probation, and that's it.
Yeah, he didn't plead guilty to rape though. He pled guilty to like illegal sexual something with a minor, basically.
Yes. So, but the judge took the plea deal off the table, and so because the system wasn't treating him as he is a famous person, he fled to France.
Yeah.
Where there was and is no extradition treaty, so he can't be extradited and given back to the United States to face a trial, not just in this case for what he did, which was a horrible thing, but also doing the terrible thing of not wanting to serve time.
Right. He does. Yeah. That's the thing that really makes him like he in the system pled guilty to this thing, and then he fled the country. That he didn't try to like face the music. He just was like, I'm going to flee completely. There's like I said, there's stuff that you can look into and research on your own if you want to look into it. There's weird stuff with like what the person, the girl who was the other part of this situation.
She forgave him in like 2022, I think.
Right.
But to add to that, I'm glad that she's able to forgive him.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Polanski, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Because not because he's still fled, and because he's still not serving time, and because he's still a scumbag.
Yeah.
So
the thing,
yeah, regardless of what you think of him, I think it's more so the case of, because the system didn't work out in his favor, because he's so famous, that's why he fled, and that's why he's still a scumbag. That's why he can't be forgiven.
Yeah. He's a real, genuine dirtbag of a human being. I have no sympathy for that man. That man got off easy for what he did.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Hollywood in general has supported him over the years, even though he's not allowed back in the US. There's a little bit too much forgiveness, I think, for Polanski in Hollywood, and I don't want to get too much into it more than we already have.
But the last point I wanted to make about Hollywood is it was only 6 years ago when they stopped caring about him, which sucks, because it became real convenient to not worry about it until it became inconvenient because all the scumbags in Hollywood were ratted out.
Yeah.
So they only decided to care when it was entirely too late and under dubious circumstances. That's the problem I have with Hollywood as it is today.
Yeah.
They'll only do what is right when it's convenient to do so. They won't do what's right when it's right.
Back in 2002, when The Pianist won Best Picture, in that same awards, Michael Moore was trying to protest the Iraq War in his speech. And not that Michael Moore is my favorite guy ever, but he got booed off stage for trying to protest the Iraq War. So that, like, they did not have their priorities straight, I don't think. And it's just, there's a lot to look into with that. You can, like I keep saying, you can do that on your own. We're not the show to like get into all of that.
My point is that people in Hollywood are humans too, so stop idolizing him that much. They are not moral in what they do just because of what they do. They are moral if they are moral.
Yeah, there's just a little bit of a pall over all of Polanski's films. And he's made some genuinely terrific all-time classics, this being one of them. And the subject matter, and the subject matter of this one too makes it a little skeezy and difficult from like the perspective of he's the guy who made this. Because it seems to be really damning of this thing, but then he turns around and does what he did, and it's like, oh, what were you trying to like just get something out of your system then? I don't know like what's going on here then in that case. But I mean, but like Rosemary's Baby, Repulsion, he's made so many classic films, especially in the late 60s and 70s. It's just a difficult thing. And like I said, it's just kind of a pall over watching any of his films, even when they are a classic. Yeah, but anytime I talk about Polanski now, like when I'm talking about him and I'm praising his filmmaking in the rest of this episode, just know I pretty much hate this guy as a human being.
Which sucks because he made a damn good film.
This is the separation of the art from the artist. This is like the example of that to me. Is Polanski specifically. Because but that being said, this is a fabulously made film. Polanski really does have a good sense of what he's making here. With that film noir, he has a really good sense of just the Hollywood history and being able to capture all of that. The film has kind of the one thing I'm kind of iffy on in the movie is something that I think is a very intentional thing in the film. It's just, it does decrease my enjoyment slightly of when I'm watching it, is that the movie is just this very dusty beige and brown kind of colors throughout, which is the point. They're in a drought in the middle of LA, which is a desert.
I mean, theoretically the Dust Bowl had just happened.
And it does a good
37, 38, something like that.
And it does a good job too of like having then the contrast when you do get those pops of green in like the garden area and stuff like that of like.
But you notice it's only the wealthy houses because
exactly,
they can afford the water, and also it's the wife of the man who controls the water department. So if he doesn't have good water, then the rest of LA sure doesn't.
Right. But he does have good water. So it feels very intentional in that color palette stuff. But I don't really like the way it looks has never been that appealing to me. The actual shot compositions, on the other hand, are incredible. Like there are some wonderful shots here. It's just the actual, it's just, this is more of a nitpick than anything. The color palette of the movie is about as dingy as it gets, you know? But I don't think that it's especially beautiful to look at for the most part, even though I do think the cinematography is great. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy.
Its choice of locations, well, of course, when they're talking about like the air quotes LA River, which is basically just like 5 feet across nowadays. But the shot composition for that, it is intentional, and it is, you're right, it's brown, it's beige, it's basically Breaking Bad. But the thing that I like is I've been to LA and I didn't feel the magic. I feel the magic with this movie somehow.
Right. I've been to LA as well, and it definitely has like a different kind of way of capturing it.
There's only so many homeless people you can drive by and be like, yep, I can turn the other cheek to that and look at the pretty buildings and pretty sightlines.
Yeah, but it does a good job of representing just like what Hollywood really is, you know, in terms of what the landscape of it is. It's not really this metropolis of sorts. It's this dusty town that just grew way too big than it was supposed to be able to handle, you know?
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, I do love the presentation of LA in this film for sure.
It definitely is a love letter to LA. This is the point when I'll bring up, so there's a commentary track, and you said it was on the, what'd you say? It was on the Blu-ray disc?
I have it on the Blu-ray disc, but I didn't listen to it.
There's a commentary track with Robert Towne, the writer, one of the script writers. Technically, Polanski was the other one, but I digress. So Robert Towne sat down with David Fincher, of all directors, which is awesome because I love David Fincher's work. And so they go through the entire thing, and it's essentially, I kid you not, every single time there is a change in scene or change in shot, David Fincher says, "Oh, I love this scene. Oh, I love this shot." And I'm like, yeah. I believe you.
Yeah. It is one of those though. Like if you're like it's something so great, and why the script and the writing holds up so well is that it really draws you in.
Yeah.
Like using those classic noir tropes, but it's a really good noir just on its own though. Like in that kind of way, it's a really good, just like private eye kind of movie.
It's very unique in that in a time when everyone expected, of course, the femme fatale kills the husband. Of course that happened, but she comes off as a femme fatale, but she isn't, because she's withholding something, but it's so personal that she can't divulge it.
Right. There's a lot of duplicity, and there's false identities, and there's an over-the-top nature, I think, to a lot of noir stuff that I really enjoy. I've always loved that kind of angle to the heightened nature of noir filmmaking, because you do have like these people holding secrets and, like I said, false identities, like the lady that comes in claiming to be the wife of
Ida Sessions, which is a great name.
Yeah.
That is a great name.
She claims to be Mulray's wife, but she was not his wife. She was a woman of the night. But then it turns out
she also has a Screen Actors Guild card for some reason.
But yeah, then she also was, so she was assumed to be the mistress then, but she wasn't the mistress. She was just hired. But who was she hired by? You know, like all of these different layers on layers of things. That's just so interesting. And
something that I'll point to, like Network and In Bruges, it's very easy to miss details, but if you notice the details, it all comes together and there's no loose ends by the end of it. I love those kind of movies, and I especially love it here.
That's something, okay, Robert Towne also wrote the first Mission Impossible, and that's something that the first Mission Impossible has that none of the other Mission Impossible movies have, is that kind of like the layers on things getting kind of, the onion layers being peeled back in front of your eyes.
Parfaits had layers.
But you know what I mean, though, like within regards to the first Mission Impossible, like that writing style.
Edgar Wright's movies have them to a T. Like he's well known for that. Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim, the Cornetto trilogy all have those kind of layers that I just love in movie making, or especially writing. But the movies that we've talked about, they really show, because it's an incentive to follow along to the movie, because it gives your brain a sense of like accomplishment when you figure out something that's about to happen and then it happens, or the opposite happens and you're stunned.
Yeah.
It's brain food.
Yeah, for sure. So once Faye Dunaway kind of enters the scene and she kind of reveals that she's truly Mrs. Mulray, you know, she's not, the other person was not Mrs. Mulray, but she is. And she's now looking into what was happening because she gets like this, now it got published that he was cheating, not because Jake released it or anything, that just information got out, but it wasn't the right information, but it still got out, you know? Like, yeah. So she comes to try to like fix everything and she can't. And then it gets tied in because her dad, who was
Noah Cross,
partners with Mulray in the water commission, you know, or in owning the water, basically, he kind of gets JJ to go with him, and he hires him.
Did you call him JJ?
He's called JJ Gittes. That's his name, but he is Jake. He's not. He's referred to as Mr. Gittes. Actually, they all pronounce his name differently, which is funny.
John Huston says Mr. Gitz.
He says, he says Mr. Gitz. Faye Dunaway says Giddies. And most other people say Gittes. But he never corrects anybody because that doesn't seem like it's in his character to correct anybody.
Maybe he's French. Maybe it's Gitte.
He doesn't seem to care how people pronounce his name. But,
I mean, the story on that is John Huston. I think that that's Angelica Houston's father, right? John Huston.
Yeah, he plays Noah Cross.
Yeah. So John Huston gets it incorrect like a few times, and then Jack Nicholson corrects him, and then he still proceeds to call him Gets the entire time. The real reason, and it's amazing that they just left it in, but the real reason is John Huston couldn't remember that it was Gittes, not Gits.
That's so really that fits perfectly with the character.
Kept doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, Noah Cross, that character is such a despicable person.
Yep.
And you get just a bad feeling from him from like that first scene, you know, he like brings out like the fish head, you know, or whatever, like the fish with the head on.
He's actually eating it. They're actually eating the food in a movie. They never do that. Movie makers never have people eat the food.
Yeah.
But John Huston's like, nah, I'm just hungry. I'm eating this food.
Yeah, you just get the sense that this guy's a scumbag, you know, right away. Little do you know just how much of a scumbag that he is, though, at the time. But there's this whole kind of thing with like the water is going, he's told that so Mulray gets found dead after after this information came that he was having an affair came out. And so he's found dead in the water, though. He was drowned, ironically, even though it's a drought. And so Jake investigating
and he's also the water department head.
Yeah, Jake uses his ways to investigate and get in. He goes behind the gates and everything and sees that there's like a large amount of runoff, you know, getting sent just wasted.
Which is weird. Basically. It's a drought and you're pushing water into the ocean.
Right. And then he gets his nose cut by, so I can trash on Roman Polanski. Yeah. I can trash on Roman Polanski for a second because he's a terrible actor.
Yeah, he's not great.
He's not a big part of the movie at all.
Yeah, his direction was awful.
But his role as the character, the man with the knife, I think is what he's credited as.
Yeah,
he's a terrible actor in that scene. But I do love that he gets his nose cut, and then throughout the whole movie, just has like a bandage for the most part. And then
the scene after, I remember the shot of his back as he's talking about the case, but he's very irate, and obviously his nose has been cut, but then it shows his gigantic bandage on his face. Right. And it's like, that is just comically large.
It's comically large, but it's also like Jack Nicholson. I love his commitment to it too, and just the filmmaking commitment to it. Like, we're going to have this giant bandage across our main star's face.
And it's a plot device too. Yeah.
Right. The whole time. So yeah, I that's the kind of detail in movies that are written like this. Like, you kind of get that kind of stuff in like in Bruges too, where the things that happen to the characters, even like things that feel like they could be smaller things, have an impression still on the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Going forward. And
even the small things that are just drops in the ocean can cause a tidal wave.
Right. And you get that sense from this.
I also just love the scene of him climbing over the fence after he gets after Jake climbs the fence, loses his shoe, and then he's more angry about that than anything
Right.
else.
Yeah, because he's like getting flooded, like he gets hit by the water while he's looking.
And that was all one shot. Man, Jack Nicholson was a very, very athletic guy. I mean, he's doing that in a 2-piece suit, man.
I mean, back in the day, yeah, in the early 70s.
I mean, this was
60s.
his literal prime. So.
Yeah, this was Jack Nicholson's prime. He's always been an odd looking individual, I think, but he's just got this intensity as an actor that nobody else has, that specific intensity that Jack Nicholson
he comes
has.
off as confident and arrogant when in fact he knows very little, but he's very suave.
But he can still be very smooth, you know, like he's so good here.
Like when they go to the yacht club or whatever it was, and he's grilling the host about everything, just trying to get information out of him, and he turns everything on a head. He's asking if the host will divulge the clientele list, and he's like, we absolutely can't do that. And he wasn't expecting that answer, but in response he just goes, and that's exactly what I wanted you to say. But it's just turning dialogue on its head just so well.
And if you like this character so much, Kyle, pleased to tell you that Jack Nicholson actually directed a sequel to this that came out in 1990. Called The Two Jakes
with Harvey Keitel.
I've not seen that, but I don't feel like I need to. So.
Yeah, I knew more about that movie than I did this one, but that's just because I only knew about that movie because it just looks so weird to me, like and just the mythology of it. But I am aware that it's markedly worse, even though I haven't seen it. It's been taken. It's not a good sequel to this movie, evidently, somehow. I don't know how you top this, but you know,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but clearly Jack Nicholson felt strongly enough about the character to,
you know what, I'm okay with
direct a sequel to it. So yeah, you know, good for him doing what he wants to do.
I might see it someday, because if his acting is even like 70%, like even 50% what it is in this movie,
right?
Like he'd be a really good actor in it.
Yeah, if I watch it, it'll be out of curiosity for sure.
Yeah,
just kind of curiosity,
morbid curiosity of like why was this not a complete story? But this movie also has a decent amount of it's like Network. It's got a decent amount of like very talented supporting cast
right away. Like one of the first people that you see is Burt Young, who plays Paulie and Rocky. He plays Curly in this movie. This, you know, also kind of scummy character who's going to Jake and everything. He owes Jake money.
And he suspects his wife is cheating on him. Yeah.
Yeah. And then later in the movie, when he shows up, you see that his wife has a black eye. You know? It's like,
even that kind of like storyline is brought back.
Right.
That's what is essentially just a setup for Jake's character. That entire scene is wrapped up in a neat little bow.
Right. And it's really nice how that comes back.
Yep. Again, it's my favorite type of storytelling. Yeah.
There's a whole thing with so the runoff, or they were told that they were diverting water to the orange farmers in a different part of California because they needed water to help them out. So then Jake takes it upon himself to go up to some orange farms and investigate the orange farmers, which
get shot at immediately.
These are some crazy ass farmers. Yep. They just literally just start shooting the second they see him, basically, until they get to talk it out.
Also, it comes out that they've been it comes out that they've been sabotaged by the irrigation company as well as the water department.
Right. So the water's obviously not going to them.
Right.
Yeah. So then it's just kind of building on. Yeah.
Jack Nicholson takes what is very evidently a rubber crutch to the back of the neck. I don't know if you remember that when when he gets knocked out, the guy holding it, he's holding it by the midsection to not disclose the fact that it's just very clearly a rubber crutch.
Right. I mean, Jake's got kind of a big mouth though, so he gets he can't. He's held at gunpoint. He's still got a big mouth, and they knock him out.
Well, yeah. He's got this kind of like this sort of complex where I suspect just believes he cannot die, no matter what he does.
He definitely has some sort of complex. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as the film goes on, they find that what's the real conspiracy here and what's actually happening is the water is being misdirected so that they can gouge the water supplies, and then they can use the names of some deceased elderly people to buy up all the land while it's cheap, and then they can then reinvest in it, like when it's, they can sell it off when it's worth way more and just make off.
It's the most obvious plot line ever. It's rich people trying to get more wealth using sketchy tactics. Yep.
Yes, but they do such a good job of like laying out just how they could get away with this, without the right person finding out about it. And Jake just happens to be the right person in this situation to figure that out.
And he happens to be the right person because somebody hired a character actress, a not very well-known Screen Actors Guild actress, to pose as the wife of the water department, or the head of the water department, to get Jake in and expose the head of the water department, leading to his eventual death.
Yeah.
It's just, how in the world does that happen? A gigantic multi-million-dollar scam is uncovered by a private eye who's just trying to find out if somebody is cheating on somebody.
Right. He just gets in really deep in this thing, but he's not the type to just let that go. It
starts with the smallest stakes and then ends with gigantic stakes.
Yeah, there's massive ramifications to this, what was essentially an affair, just kind of like making, like, he tells her at the beginning, like, you don't want to know, you know, trust me, you don't want to know, you just take your money and leave. It's better that you don't know, is kind of how this starts. And then it turns into this thing that he gets too deep into, but he's not the type to just let it go. Like, he has to see it through. He has to find out what's actually going on.
Yeah, his nose has been cut and he likes breathing in it.
Right.
So he's got to figure out why. So.
Right. Does it hurt? Only when I breathe.
Only when I breathe.
Faye Dunaway does some great just like eye acting in this movie. Like when she sees his cut after he takes off the bandage, her eyes just kind of like widen just slightly,
Well, there's that scene early on when she makes it into his office without him knowing.
Yeah.
And so they're talking about her husband and her father, and she gets visibly shaken, so much so that she lights another cigarette when she's already got one lit.
Right.
But she also has that exact same thing after they sleep together. You see she's very open with him. And then the second that she finds out that he saw her father, she immediately covers up physically and mentally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's that. That kind of, it's so good.
Faye Dunaway's character and her acting really, really show. Somehow, like, all the praise that we give Jack Nicholson in this movie, which he does an amazing job, Faye Dunaway's character and acting is superb.
Right. And she's a little bit more subtle for the first, I would say 2/3 of this movie. The last third, not as much. It's a little bit bigger performance in that kind of capacity, but you get why, like, it definitely has to be that way.
Right. And that,
because you get the point where after they slept together, she gets like a call or something and she like runs off basically, but she tells him to just stay there, and he very cleverly busts out one of her tail lights so that it's easy to follow her. And this is where you get
Robert Towne said he got that idea from a cop from the 30s.
Oh yeah, well look at that,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great idea. It's very clever.
The same thing with the was it the pocket watches? One of them breaking under a tire to see which car was theirs. Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then, so when he follows her there, he sees that she's with the girl, and then he goes in and he's got her on, or she, this is where she lies to him.
Yeah.
But she doesn't fully lie. And this is another piece of great acting from her, where she's trying to explain who this girl is. 'Cause he's like, that's the
I'll go to the police if you don't tell me.
Yeah, Mulray was having an affair with this woman and you're holding her hostage, basically. Yeah. Like, you've kidnapped her, is what he assumes here, until she reveals the piece of information that she does. And you can see the acting in her where she's trying to decide which piece of information to tell divulge, him, basically, which would be the best. And she does say the better one for hiding more in the moment and convincing him what she needs to convince him, and saying that it's her sister.
Yeah.
Because if she said it was her daughter, because that's the big reveal in this movie. This is the whole,
technically
it's her daughter
both.
And her sister.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to that. But
roll tide.
If she revealed that it was his daughter, because he assumes it's the person that Mulray was having an affair with, then she's having to reveal a lot more. So her saying it's her sister, then her husband was having an affair with her sister, and she would want to protect her sister.
Yeah,
is kind of what she's leaning on here, and she does a great
but also like she's technically a hidden daughter, and of course like records could easily be searched to find like her daughter, and obviously like in the public eye, and especially for a private detective. He would find out, and he would also know if she had a daughter.
Right.
Like immediately. But yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take that much longer at this point in the film to get to the point where he's figuring out that information.
Right.
But then you have his old cop pal, from back when he was they were working together in Chinatown.
Escobar.
Escobar. And you've got kind of their dynamic throughout the film of, just like he has with everybody, where he's not trying to give too much information. He's trying to get as much information as he can.
Side tangent for Perry Lopez, who plays Escobar. He does the exact kind of acting that like Jack Nicholson's character does, except like he's one step below. So, so Faye Dunaway's at the top when it comes to knowing what's going on. And then everyone else, and it's like a gigantic swing all the way down. And then Jack Nicholson's character, because he doesn't know very much, but he's on the right track. And then Escobar is exactly like that. And I cannot remember the line, but I think it's like, do you think I'm dumb, Giddis? And he says, well, I haven't given it much thought, but give me a day and I'll get back to you. And
then because you're dumber than you think I thought.
You're dumber than you think I think you are, which is a great line.
Yeah, the first time I watched this movie, I just like wrote that line down immediately, and I forgot that I did that, but I found an old note.
Yeah.
And I wrote it down again here.
No, that was actually a note to yourself. You're dumber than I think you think.
It's such a good line.
It's the Bilbo Baggins. I know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like half of you half as well as you deserve.
Yeah.
That's good.
Everybody's just confused for a minute.
Yeah, everyone's like, wait, hold on, what?
Are you insulting us right now?
Was that an insult or a compliment? Hold on.
Yeah, but so then you get the whole where he's now realizing that there's more to it than that he doesn't know still.
Yeah.
And he calls Escobar and goes over to her and says, "Hey, the guy's coming now. You got to tell me everything right now, or else I'm going to arrest you."
Yep.
And because he realizes that she was lying because she doesn't have a sister in the system. Yeah. So he's like, well, you don't have a sister, so who could this woman be? And then she says it's her daughter, and then she says it's her sister. She goes back and forth.
And also, like, I found these bifocals in your literal salt lake. What's going on here?
Right. It's a pond, because the salt water's bad. Which the housekeeper guy, that's James Hong. Love James Hong.
Butler,
just give a shout out. Yeah, give a shout out to James
Absolutely.
Hong. Still working to this day, crushing it, using everything everywhere all at once. His voice is everywhere.
He's got a very distinct voice, and I just like seeing him. Yep, I just like seeing him in everything.
Yeah, and this is like his earliest role that I've seen him in personally.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that he's in a classic like this.
He was probably, well, at the time, there were definitely a lot of Hong Kong movies. I wonder if he was in a bunch of those beforehand.
Yeah, I really don't know, honestly, but I love seeing him pop up here. So just a shout out to him.
I'm looking it up because any opportunity to look up James Hong's IMDb
Absolutely.
Page.
100%.
Oh, he was in Two Broke Girls. Look at that.
He's been in so many things.
He's been in everything. He's probably the least most well-known actor ever.
Yeah.
His man has been in literally everything. His earliest credit, or uncredited, I guess, would have been 54.
The man has 456 credits.
Yeah. That is John Williams and
Staggering.
Hans Zimmer level, but not for acting. For
No, like
soundtrack.
that's more, yeah. Like from an acting perspective, like my goodness. I mean, and he's what? He's like, is he in his
He's well in his
90s
80s or
or
90s.
is he's in his 80s? He's born in 29. So
Oh, that would make him. Yeah, he's 95.
right. So the fact that he's still working to the extent that he is, crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he plays a lot of small bit characters and stuff like he does here,
Yeah, I'd
but then he
say
pops up in like 15 things a year, you know?
yeah, he
So,
basically plays when you need an old wise Chinese voice
right.
in the movie or video game or TV series. That's
Though
basically what he
he does
does.
get to play a smuggler in Star Wars Rebels. So
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. I also know him because he plays the voice of just like one character in Diablo 3, but I played Diablo 3 so
yes.
much and went through the
Yeah, he
campaigns
does.
so much that
Every time
I
I
knew
play it and I
him.
hear it, yeah, every time I play that and I hear him, I'm like, is that James Hong? I
I'm
just
like,
always forget.
attention, attention. That's Mr. Ping.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the secret to your noodles?
But yeah, Hannah wasn't watching the whole movie with me, but Hannah was watching that scene where you get that final revelation towards the end of it, and he's just slapping her over and over again. She's going, my sister, she's my sister, my daughter, my sister, my daughter, she's my daughter and my sister.
Yep. Just
And
like in Fight Club, those were actual slaps.
yes, yeah. Oh man. And Hannah was
That was
cracking
Faye
up.
Dunaway's idea. She's a masochist, I guess.
I guess so, but but she knows that line most specifically from Gilmore Girls, where
Oh
Lorelai makes my
no.
daughter, my sister, my daughter, my sister, make up your mind or something
Yeah.
like that. She didn't realize the context for it at all.
Yeah.
So getting the context for it is like a stark reality. That's like, oh shoot, that's what this is. This is an incest movie.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, this is.
Wait, this takes place in
not, this
LA?
is,
I thought this was Alabama.
yeah, this is the incest movie.
Near, 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 near,
Perhaps.
near, near, near.
But yeah, it's a really horrifying revelation, and that's where that like 70s sleaze really just comes into focus, because it's been there throughout the whole movie, but
Yep.
that revelation just really just makes that just how clear it was, and kind of just changes it, recolors the whole film in that
And the
light.
thing I love is for all of his faults, Jake Gittes immediately becomes pragmatic. He's like,
Absolutely.
well, you can't take the train. You've got to get out of here.
Yeah, and he's already got the guy coming, and now he's got to figure out a way to weasel his way out of that situation, because now he's withholding evidence, you know, at this point.
Yeah,
and
he's obstructing now.
Yeah, obstruction of justice. So now this is when he tricks him to going to the address of the Burt Young Curly character, where he goes in first. He's like, I know this guy, let me, you know, or whatever. Or he's like, I want to get into this house first, and calm her down, or whatever he says to convince him to let him go. And then he goes with, he gets Curly up from dinner and just is like, hey, you gotta drive me downtown, basically. So he just sneaks out the back and drives away. And then he gets Curly to, he convinces Curly to drive the Faye Dunaway character.
Yeah, but also all her belongings.
Evelyn. Yeah, and the
Catherine
sister,
is, I believe, her
Catherine.
sister daughter.
Yes, Catherine. To drive them to Mexico or something, just get them away. So yeah, but then this movie also, it's not just the twist that it's known for. This
Tragic endings.
It has a very tragic ending, which is common with noir, but this, just because of the subject matter of the film, like it just feels that much worse when they're trying to get away. Noah Cross shows back up and he's trying to reclaim his daughter, you know, the not Evelyn, but Catherine, his incest child, because he's already given up on Evelyn. He's like, this is the only daughter I've got. She's rejected me, so I need her. And he's basically like, I have the right to her. Oh, God, so disgusting. And just no remorse, none at all from this guy for what he's done. And to the point where he's just trying to take possession. And Evelyn's like, I never want her to know that that's the
But not
case.
only that, after the tragic ending, Faye Dunaway's character dies.
Yeah, as they're driving away, she gets
John
shot.
Huston's character, Noah Cross like takes Catherine away. So he gets, in the end, he gets what he wants.
He gets what he wants.
Evelyn's no more. His business partner is no more, and he's got the only family he's got left that he can manipulate.
Right, and then you get that famous line of "Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown," and that's
which I appreciate. So it wasn't going to be Chinatown in the original script, and it also wasn't going to be a sad ending in the original script. But what I like about the ending is they bring it back to Chinatown, because Chinatown's become like the mythological like place that you should never be in.
Right.
Throughout the entire movie, and I'm like, when is this gonna
play into it?
Yeah, play into it, and it plays into it exactly at the end. Polanski, I'll give you that one. You suck, but good idea. Damn it.
He's a great filmmaker. I can't deny his talent as a filmmaker, his understanding of the medium. He really is a terrific filmmaker.
But also, just like the comeuppance, obviously it didn't work out in Jake's favor. He pried too much, and he was just doing it for him, and karmic retribution of the time that he was on the force in Chinatown.
Yeah.
Comes back to bite him literally.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about with Chinatown? You're ready to move into scoring.
One of the things that I definitely noticed was the movie introduces two things and then breaks one of them. So the pocket watches, there's two of them. One of them is broken.
Yeah.
Faye Dunaway's eye, one of them is defective. And what happens in the end, she gets shot through the eye.
Mm-hmm.
There are two business partners. One of them comes up dead.
Yeah.
There are, it's a stretch, but Jack Nicholson's character has two nostrils. One of them gets cut. So David Fincher in the commentary track asked Robert Towne if that was intentional. Just the motif of introducing two things and one of them being broken. The bifocals as well.
Yeah.
The glasses, one of them is broken.
Right.
And Robert Towne was like, no, never came up. So I believe that to be true, but I think it could be like some sort of like subconscious thing.
Right.
Where it was an accidental motif of just layers and layers of things popping up and one of them being broken.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll say, which we'll talk about more in sound, is the score for this movie wasn't the original score. It you'll probably remember the composer's name because I can't off the top of my head. But the composer who came in only had 9 days to write that score.
Yeah, that's an insane thing.
And it is a great score.
It's a very noir, like jazzy saxophone kind of thing.
Yeah, that trumpet is everywhere.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I'm glad that I noticed, like, during the movie, I'm not saying it's bad and I'm not saying I felt off with it, but I noticed that it was like a little bit out of place in parts.
Yeah, it's Jerry Goldsmith.
Like some things, some things were just not like polished like they would be if like the original composer had been given time, or if the composer coming in had been given time.
Yeah. And it still got a nomination for original score.
Absolutely. And it deserves it.
Yep.
Because especially given the 9 days thing, but it's also a very good score.
Yeah.
But it's just got that like rough around the edges. Maybe it's intentional, but it's got that rough around the edges in parts that just could have been polished up.
Well, it kind of feeds into the noir kind of thing, because noir films were always genre films. They weren't like the prestige films back when in like the 30s and everything. Those were genre films. So kind of like gangster films and stuff like that. Those weren't what they were until like those weren't prestige films until stuff like The Godfather came out and changed what they perception of those things. So yeah, that rough around the edges thing kind of really fits still, even for the genre.
Yeah, if it were another genre, if it were a different kind of genre, if it were like an animated movie or something like that, and the score just falls flat a little bit, it would mess with the emotions of the scenes. Yeah. But for this one, it just makes it unusual and also kind of unexpected. And that works for the genre because the entire plot line is something that's unexpected and then turns out to be the case.
Right. Yeah.
Or the thing that you least suspect becomes the thing that actually happens. I think that was it.
Yeah. All right. Then you ready to move into scoring now?
Let's move into scoring. For this podcast, we have a 0 to 2 on our 10 categories. 0 meaning not good, 1 being good, 2 being great. It is our score for the show, not exactly what either of us think individually, and not what we think the actual movie is. It's also very vague. That's why the 0 to 2, very subjective terms, not very descriptive. So we keep it vague, starting a conversation, not exactly finishing it.
Yep. As usual, the first category is writing.
So that's 2. So world building.
Yes. Honestly, though, okay, Robert Towne won an Academy Award for this. It's an amazing script. Roman Polanski also wrote on it.
The things he added were probably better than the original script.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring this up for some reason. So I also brought this movie up, and I'm glad I get to talk about this. When we talked about Network and when we talked about In Bruges, those were at least like written very succinctly by essentially one person.
Yeah.
Sidney Lumet, as he was directing it, mostly just let Paddy Chayefsky.
Yes.
So Paddy Chayefsky, essentially, his script was almost untouched from the final product. And of course, with In Bruges, it's just one director, one writer, and it's the same guy. So Martin McDonagh. So obviously that's going to be, I have to look not but to myself for writing. So I wanted to talk about this because of the fact that it was a good script, a very, very Hollywood-worthy script that was taken apart and then put back together in pieces by two people who were often quibbling. And it turned out to be this.
Yeah.
So good writing and great writing can come from any situation.
Right. It really can.
Yeah.
All right.
Needless to say, yeah, it's
a 2. Easy 2.
This is obviously the films that we've talked about before. This is among them.
Yeah.
And we've given 2s to lesser movies.
We have. Yeah. No, great is, feels light to call this script great. It's incredible.
Yeah.
World building is the next category. I think
I'm actually feeling for a 2 with this one as well, because like I said, it's a love letter cinematography wise, as well as like the sets specifically for, and the way that the world is built around the story. It's a love letter to LA.
Yeah.
And it feels very LA of the time. And they had to work around, obviously, because they can't show LA from the 70s as the 30s, even though in some shots they accidentally do, or on purpose. But the way that these characters move through the world is effortless, seemingly.
Yeah.
Even though that's tough to do.
Right.
And it's tough to make it work so easily.
And with the layers and layers of like things that they have going on plot-wise within this world too, and making it all make sense and cohesive and connect. Yeah, they do a great job with the world building. Yeah, I would say it's a 2.
Another 2, yeah.
Yeah. Characters is another 2.
Another easy 2.
Another easy 2, honestly. We've talked a lot about the characters. So
we're going to be saying 2s in the next 15 minutes more than 2 Chainz.
This is going to be a very high score for this movie.
This is going to be a very high score.
Directing, as much as I hate to give Polanski any props, it is a 2.
Yeah, his character is a 0, but his
directing is
directing is a 2. I also didn't talk about it, but don't want to give credit to the man. His handheld shots are impeccable, especially for the 70s. Like, I haven't really seen handheld shots like that in a 70s movie or anything earlier. So, like, and how the film moves through the world through Jack Nicholson's eyes mostly, but not through his literal eyes. It's mostly over the shoulder, or you're looking at Jack Nicholson's back. So it's like you're along for the ride, but no one ever acknowledges you exist. It's definitely a cool way to do film noir as well, because it's a mystery. And also, the way to do bad mystery is setting up things that we can't predict, that we had no knowledge or any evidence for.
Yeah.
So I'll point to like some TV shows that feel the need to, and the character of Sherlock Holmes gets butchered so much because TV show makers essentially want him to be a god figure when it comes to deducing evidence and answers to crimes, but sometimes they fail to show the evidence.
Yeah.
And Sherlock will just come up with an idea on the spot with no prior anything beforehand. Nothing prior.
I'm much more compelled by like actually seeing somebody work for it, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Not only working for it, but you're following along the story, and there's nothing that you could get to that wasn't or there was nothing that the character that you're following get to before you also have that chance.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, acting is a 2.
Yeah, acting is absolutely a 2.
Yep. Visuals.
I think I like Faye Dunaway's acting better than this. In this than Network somehow.
Which is saying a lot because she's so good.
That is saying a lot. She is fantastic in that movie.
Yeah.
And like I said before, Jack Nicholson, this is my favorite acting choice that he's done. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is pretty good. And of course, he's really, really good as the Joker. And like in The Departed.
I mean, he's a phenomenal actor.
He has a
career full of great performances.
Yeah, probably the best actor to ever live. So yeah,
I don't know if I quite go there with it, but I kind of he's in the conversation though. Like he's definitely in the conversation.
He's got a decent argument.
He's so distinct, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I actually knew this beforehand. So Jack Nicholson, his mother was 17 when she had him. And so she let her parents raise Jack. And Jack was told always that his mother was actually his sister.
Huh.
And he found out not too long before this movie came out the truth.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That is weird. Wow.
Oh, and also John Huston is great as a he appears frail and appears less than he actually is, but the second he opens his mouth to talk, he's both despicable and
he's in command.
Quite imposing.
Yeah, he's in command of the conversation, you know.
And also Angelica Houston, his daughter, was dating Jack Nicholson at the time. So that, like, "Are you sleeping with my daughter?" has 2 meanings.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Our next category is visuals. I brought up my gripe with the visuals, which once again, it's an intentional thing and it serves a purpose.
It is LA with a drought.
Yeah, it serves a purpose. I just don't know that I love looking at it, even though the compositions are so good. You know, I'm between a 1 and a 2 here. How do you feel about it?
I think I'm a strong 2 for this one because what I've said about the cinematography, as well as this captures LA in a way that I've never seen before.
I don't think my quibble can get it to that point because it's literally just a matter of I don't find the movie that appealing to look at. But
also, how do you look at the way that Faye Dunaway is portrayed in this movie and not see her as the definitive mystery,
right?
Mystique woman.
And for me it's literally just a color palette thing, and it still serves a purpose, and I understand the purpose that it's serving, and I like the purpose that it's serving. It's just this weird asterisk on it, but yeah, definitely.
Hey, you don't like the color
2.
Brown? I'm not going to take away any unintended thoughts.
It's
about
just a lot of beige. It's just a very beige movie. It just is what it is. But yeah, I will not protest it too, because I cannot dispute that. I do think that this is still a gorgeously filmed movie, and that the cinematography makes up for anything that I feel is a deficiency in the color spectrum on display, because it doesn't need to be a colorful film. I just feel some of the noir qualities outside of highlighting the differences would almost be better in black and white still. But
I'll point to one shot, the shot of Evelyn Mulwray driving up to the house where her daughter is located for the first time, and seeing Jack Nicholson pull up. It's all just the one shot. It's an extended shot of her pulling up, her going into the house, and then we see his car pull up. He gets out of his car, and then the camera pans up to show the entire thing. It's like a 25-second shot that shows so many things on screen. And then it goes into just that amazing scene of him figuring out that Catherine is just holed up in that house. So, yeah, the cinematography is some of the best I've seen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, editing. Once again, it's incredible. Big
Damn
sigh.
it, Polanski.
Damn, you made a great. I mean, it's a great movie.
I'm glad it exists, but I'm not glad that he exists.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It got a nomination for film editing, which I don't think The Godfather 2 actually got a nomination for film editing. I might be wrong about that, but Chinatown got nominated in more categories. They both got nominated for 11, but
yeah, Towering Inferno won for film editing. Godfather wasn't nominated. The Longest Yard, Earthquake, and Blazing Saddles were the other nominated ones.
Yes.
I loved Blazing Saddles editing though.
Yeah, but, I do.
You know, it's still Chinatown.
I love that the Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein both came out in the same year in 74.
Blazing Saddles also made the most money of a movie for that year.
Yeah, it's
which
crazy.
is insane.
Right.
That's crazy.
And
for
both of them got
like
nominated for a couple of different Oscars in different categories. So, yeah, Mel Brooks, good for you. We'll eventually cover.
That was
some
Mel
of your
Brooks'
movies.
best year because those are arguably his two best movies.
Honestly, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll talk about Mel Brooks someday. We'll probably talk about both of those movies. So
eventually I'll bring up Blazing Saddles because it's my favorite of his, but I might bring up Spaceballs just because of how hilarious it is.
Yeah. Sound is, so what do we think on sound then? The score, I think is like
my thing is I still love the score, but it's not as polished as it could have been.
Right. But the sound itself is still great too.
The sound itself is still great. Yeah.
Is that thing with the score enough to drop it to a 1?
No, because it's still a great score.
I agree. Okay. Yeah. Genre, film noir. This is a staple of the genre.
I don't like the fact that Interstellar blew out my eardrums in the theater, but I would still give that score a 2. So.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Genre is the next category. Film noir is the type of film this is.
This is the best.
This is
the best of the best.
A defining film in the genre. Kind of like the end point of what this genre was up until the 70s, you know? Because the 70s, like
Wikipedia calls this a neo-noir, even though you called it not a neo-noir. So that bridging kind of thing.
It really is the gap. It bridges the gap between what you would see coming down later and what came before. It is that.
No, this set the standard for what you think of LA in the 30s. Like I said, LA Noir is one of the most influential video games to come out in the last 20 years. For good reason, because, and I suspect this movie was probably a good influence on that.
Yeah. So if you've been keeping track, there's no way we're giving our last category of impact anything less than a 2. Which puts
it made money. It has accolades, and it would have won so many more awards if Francis Ford Coppola didn't exist.
Right. But that being said, that puts us at our second ever perfect score for the show of a 20
out of 20. I'm going to be honest. I think it's well-deserved.
I think it's well-deserved too. Once again, not to prop up Polanski, but I can't deny his work.
We're not propping up Polanski. I will absolutely prop up Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway, and Robert Towne till the day I die over that, man.
That's also the thing with film, too.
With movies, it's a collaborative.
It's such a collaborative thing. There are so many people. Right now, we're dealing with this thing because the whole Jonathan Majors situation. Not to get into that really at all, but
we can get into that.
He has a movie called Magazine Dreams that came out at Sundance last year to big acclaim, got bought by Searchlight Pictures, which at this point obviously was Fox Searchlight, owned by Disney. After all of this stuff with Jonathan Majors came out, look that up on your own if you want. I'm not going to get into it, but they now have dropped that movie, and I just feel bad because that director made what is apparently a great film, and because the star of your film did something pretty bad, you know, he hit somebody, you know, like that's enough to get fired and, you know, maybe
NFL
serve some
do that all the time,
right? I'm not even saying that his whole career is going to like plummet and die and end, but I understand.
Given the current culture, his career's done.
Given the current culture, yeah.
I have to imagine.
I'm not saying, I think that he has the potential to make a comeback if he has like a Robert Downey Jr. style situation of like some sort of reconciliation and recovery thing. I don't know. We'll see going forward with that. I'm not.
Robert Downey Jr.'s situation was always weird to me because it's not like everyone in the 70s and 80s was doing cocaine and drugs.
Right.
But the second that like at the turn of the century, one man is doing it and like we care.
Yeah. Right now, I'm not rooting for Jonathan Majors to like make a quick comeback or anything. I'm just saying that I'm not saying his career is completely dead based on what he did, unlike somebody like Polanski, who I think his career should have died in the 70s.
Yeah, but it's not just the one thing he did, it's the several things he's done since.
Yeah. So but that being said, Magazine Dreams got dropped by Disney. They dropped it entirely. Now it's up for grabs for somebody, and it's probably going to get picked up for way below what the price would be otherwise, and then get dumped on some streaming service in like 2 years or something like that. And that's if they're lucky.
Yeah, isn't that kind of funny? Jonathan Majors movies and all the ripples of the people losing their gigs over it, but Polanski's still making films.
Oh my gosh, he is still. He literally had a film come out last year.
Yep.
So it doesn't play at American festivals, but it plays at European festivals. So, yeah.
If not the Weinstein situation, I have to imagine it would be playing at American festivals.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, it's unfortunate when somebody so prominent within a film, does something that kind of ruins the chances at that film's success. And this film got to be successful before all of that. And so it got its laurels, it got its accolades, it got its acclaim, and it is a great film and deserves its
I'm going to enjoy this movie, but I'm not going to support the man anymore. That's how I'll
absolutely.
That's how I'll say it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I have a hard time watching any of his films that came out after the whole 1978 fleeing the country, all of that trial stuff. Anything that came out after that, I haven't seen from him. So that's just where I'm at with that. So
it's also kind of a thing where I'll still watch his movies because like we've said, it's a collaborative process. When it comes to movies, it's easy for me to get over that because of how collaborative it is.
Yeah.
It sucks that it's the director and that's essentially the quarterback of a movie. But when it comes to like music, however, that's less collaborative.
Right.
So
it's more of an individual thing. So
it's more, especially given it's definitely more individual, full stop, but it's also more individual when it's like Michael Jackson. So
right. Yeah.
It's a different situation. Apples and oranges.
It is. It's different.
I just wanted to bring it up because it's a different situation. Therefore, I'm going to look at it differently.
But everybody's going to be different with their separating art from the artist situation. But anyway, that does it for the conversation on Chinatown. Great film. Definitely check it out. If you're not one to be, if you are okay watching one of Polanski's films, but yeah, definitely worth the watch for the film history.
I'd say it's
stuff.
still very you understand what happened, but also watch it for like educational purposes.
For sure, absolutely.
Because this thing has some things that you can grab from it.
Yeah.
Don't turn a blind eye to media that you don't like simply because of the things surrounding it, especially when it's something like this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, that'll do it for the discussion on Chinatown. However, we do
what's
have
coming up next
for next week. So I wanted to get away from just how dour Chinatown is.
Chinatown was.
It's not a fun watch. It's an engaging watch. It's very compelling, but it's not a fun. It leaves you very sick feeling at the end for sure. And I also we haven't done a modern film in a while, which I'm okay with that, but I wanted to do something again from the 2010s and up. So I picked a film that I haven't watched actually since 2013. So that's a spoiler. It's a 2013 film for you. And it is
a spoiler for a movie that you're literally going to bring up in the next 2 seconds.
Right. I picked Short Term 12, which is a wonderful, wonderful indie film, at least from my perspective. I love this film. I haven't
Somehow
seen
I've
it.
actually seen it.
You have? Wow.
No, I'm just kidding. I have never heard of this movie in my entire life.
You got me. I haven't seen it in 11 years, so I don't know what I feel about it now, but at the time I was like, man, I was really trying to get like everybody to watch this movie. I was like, Short Term 12, have you seen it? Nobody had seen it, but like I was like trying to push for it.
It's a bit like Horizon Zero Dawn. It feels like they just grabbed 3 words and put them together.
It makes sense within the context of the film, but
I'm sure it does. But when you bring it up and I have no idea what the movie's about, it's just like,
yeah.
Is that a movie?
Yes, but it's something that it will make you feel good. It's one of these indie films that I love. It's very indie for sure. But I think it's been a little bit overlooked in the last decade since it's released, even though it did garner some acclaim when it came out. I think it's been pretty overlooked since then. So I want to talk about it, want to feel good. So that's what we're talking about next week, Short Term 12. And that'll do it for this episode of Great American Movie Review. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
And these outros are getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, man. Totally. Yeah, we gotta go now. I've lost my train of thought. But either way,
playing as if it's like a sleepover for like middle school. So we gotta dip out.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the movies. Have a good day. Hasta la vista.